Red light's on. What kind of sucks is that I can't see the battery gauge from this side of the camera. But that's entirely okay. So what did I do today? Well, like usual. I did some of this work. I got something uploaded that I think will clarify me in the future to a lot of people with a single group email about playing guitar, and aging out. I've got about 4 different messages in the works because, like today, the day that I'm in contains some coolness, right? So I woke up, I did that work. My wife came out with her coffee. We talked a little bit, got my breakfast in me, got some dishes washed, and let my dog out back. And I mentioned, or it occurred to me, I didn't know whether my wife had ever noticed out back that I had took down a lot of bamboo about a month ago. And I just mentioned it. I said, I need to get all that bamboo out to the road. And it's not real easy to see because our deck is almost 5 feet off the ground. So the bamboo that's behind it really can't be seen through, for example, the laundry room window, which looks out across the deck. Oh, I could talk for a long time just about that deck from 2002 to now. It's pretty much almost the least used part of the house. And if I roofed it, it would be the biggest room in the house. Something to think about. Decks are always viewed as something that will contain a good time someday. When our kids were living here, it did. And afterwards, it doesn't. It's just another stage to play out life on. Deliberately. And, but anyways, so she was going to be going somewhere to get some stuff done today. So I said, well, I need to get that stuff out to the road. And I really haven't been looking forward to it. Because knocking it down knocked me down for a couple days. And I figured it would be lighter if I'd let it set out in some direct sunlight for a while and lose some of its moisture. Because our backyard reminded somebody of Cambodia or Vietnam. And more than a few kids have been able to run off with something that they thought they might be able to catch a fish with. Mr. Hart, can I have some bamboo? Take all you want. And so I got a hold of my big old 100-year-old cast iron pruning. If there's shears, they're the biggest shears on this piece of land. Thing's very nearly a yard long with a real small cutter at the far end that you can get around anything. You can get it to bite into a piece of wood that's almost 2 inches in diameter if you get a good angle on it. And then it depends on what you're trying to cut. But as far as bamboo goes, I learned a long time ago, anyone that goes into bamboo with a chainsaw, the kind of chainsaw that you could buy at the big box store, or, Harbor Freight or something, Lowe's. I don't even like to mention those guys. But anyway, bamboo is going to tear up your chain. It's going to make it jump off the bar. You are going to cuss more using a chainsaw in a bamboo thicket than you did when your kids were teens, all in one afternoon. And when I was a little bit younger, maybe 20 years younger, 15, after I learned the chainsaw, no. I learned that Gurkha machete, properly sharpened, yes. And got to a place where, now remember, this is the arm, I'm right-handed, and this is the shoulder that was dislocated in high school, and where I broke a collarbone too, and both wrists have been broken in my lifetime. And that thumb. But it still works pretty good for most stuff. And until about 3 years ago, I could go out with that machete, which a Gurkha soldier gave me in Korea at the Yongsan NCO mess hall, where we struck up a conversation that was so fun. And he reached into this big pack that he had and said, "Would you like this?" I said, "Tell me about it." And he did. It's the main weapon that these guys use. And these guys, the Gurkhas, are respected by SEALs, Green Berets, all of them. The Special Forces people. Some of them they'll actually get nervous. Men and women who don't generally get nervous will get nervous if there's, South Korean, Malaysian, or Taiwanese special forces around, or Gurkhas, because they say that they're kind of invisible, right? Just like those strange videos of semi-cloaked things running through the woods. You never know. This guy was cool. I wish I'd written his name down. That was the same trip where I bought the Bullwinkle guitar. Oh, Lord have mercy. A collapsible guitar that you didn't have to take the strings off of, and it fit in a leather case that was no bigger than 2 lunch boxes end to end. I don't know what happened to it. I have no idea. It vanished during my divorce, and my first wife was as non-musical as a shoe, okay? So she didn't take it. It would have gone by the road. Oh man, one of those mystery instruments. So I'm moving the bamboo. I go out there with the big cutters so that I can take things that are longer than 8 feet and cut them in half, because the city likes you to have things shorter, 8 feet or shorter, roughly about 8 feet, so that their grabber truck can grab a big bunch of it and it won't get hung up on the edges of the container. I've been doing that for years. It's just more exercise. And so I got them to the right length. And then I remembered that book about Zen practice, chop wood and carry water. And I thought, I do a lot of that, not because of the book, but because it needs to be done. And I was chopping wood long before I read that book, and carrying water. I knew a nursery rhyme about carrying water before I was old enough to pick up a pail full of water. But at any rate, and once again, I had this very strong feeling that you know, because the bad guy is basically an imitator, right? A cover band trying to play God. A big cover band. You know. He's the producer. Right? But the band has a manager and a road manager and a crew. And they're setting up something that is, you know, exponentially larger than the Grateful Dead sound system in order to keep blasting the powers of the air into humanity, right? And but no matter how big your band is or how good your conductor is, you're never going to sound like the music that was sung to bring everything into creation, which some people refer to as the Big Bang. Zappa called it the Big Note. I like that better. My black walnut rough cut front bumper on my truck says music is love for a reason. Because that's all that song was about. I've got a whole mess of acquaintances and friends who do music. Some of whom do really transcendent music. And I feel very happy that at a fairly young age, phone said hi, at a fairly young age, I was allowed to enjoy music unfettered before lessons were available to me. Because between probably 1961 and 1963, when my sister was born, and my mom was home alone with me and not driving, and I was a frenetic kid, you know, even as a young pre-literate person, I had a really strong sense of my own mortality, and it's never gone away. And Mom would put on records of classical music, Tchaikovsky, Rachmaninoff, modern classical music. I remember listening to the Nutcracker Suite, the Firebird Suite. She didn't have any Cage or Schoenberger, Conlon Nancarrow or Harry Parcher or Henry Cowell or any of that stuff. That came later. But she primed me for it because she didn't start me off on lullabies. I'm sure the neighbors always thought we were pretty off. But it was a good time at the time when she'd put a bunch of pots and pans open side down on a rug in the room where the record player was and hand me a couple of wooden spoons while she went and did laundry or something, and she'd say, play along with the record. And I did. And I realized when I was about 3.5, I realized that sometimes they sound better if you turn them back over so it's more like a bowl. And that there were other things in the kitchen I could bring in and hit when she wasn't looking at me going to get them. We are what we eat or are fed. And I was fed a lot of opportunities to improvise and have fun before I could even spell the word fun. And do it without a lot of applause. Just for the sake of doing it. And plus, it wasn't something that I had the vocabulary to describe either at the time. And what'd you do today? I played music, says the 3-year-old kid. So I hope that I've always been playing music in a way that is as childlike as possible, despite the grown-ups in the room and their perceived needs. When that's happening, it's okay. Nobody has been particularly off-putting for long. And, it's been turtles all the way down. Part of a giant support system that has allowed me, and I know this is going to seem very selfish, and at times it was, to explore, the possibilities of possibly creating a music here that could heal. And I've got some friends from way back in the 90s that are already chuckling because I said that. Because I said that back then. And I don't believe it's happened very much. To look at a thing is to change it, right? So when you work with other people, Schrodinger's cat. So when you work with other people musically or in any kind of creative energy release, if you don't conceive those things in solitude, which sometimes doesn't involve any planning at all. And when it does, I've always referred to it as structured improvisation. When I've imposed any kind of discipline on the possibilities to limit them, I call it structured improvisation, in which I take full blame for the lousiness of the composition. But pure improvisation that hasn't been discussed, in other words, the powers of the air haven't touched it yet, like James Blood Ulmer in my last, I think it was my last post, called It's Been Fun. I've been able to do that a lot. And sometimes I've had to I suppose temporarily copyright my idea by saying no about certain manipulations that other people wish would occur within it. And I suppose that the objective in each of these situations would determine, in many ways, the outcome. And when you work in a respectful way with other people, it becomes easier to dispense with what you want in service of what the music needs. And I explored the possibilities of doing that from a safe distance during all of my improvised duet series. And I think a lot or most of it is up there at archive.org. You can find it if you're not dumb or lazy. And it's free. Those people were my PhD level deep immersion into freely responding to music in real time and then recording it and mixing it with the music you just heard without intervention. And if you, because things are dualistic, right? Everything is binary. I also invited these people who I met and were open to collaboration to send whether they would be willing to accept something from me that was completely improvised and recorded without intervention and respond to it in the same way that I did to the tracks they'd sent me and see what happens. Now, I knew in advance that this, to quote Zappa and the Mothers, it had no commercial potential whatsoever. Like all of my music, except for maybe some of the song bands where there were earnings. Oh. But anyways, I mean a whole lot by that. But I'm so pleased with all of that stuff. And in many cases, some people make it immediately known to you which branch of belief, if it has a name, of all the scores of ways that people can believe that life has real meaning and reasons to enjoy being here in spite of it. For me, that was usually pretty informative, because then I could interact with whatever they might have sent me or enter into a recorded improvisation considering what I knew about them, and allow that to sort of, if it wished to, penetrate the improvisation in some way that might possibly be perceptible to us. That didn't happen. Or at least those conversations never happened. And I think that for some of those folks, well, actually for almost all of them, no, all of them. You see, this is how I know this season is sunsetting. It's been sunsetting for a long time, right? But I'm not in communication with those people any longer. Not because I don't wish to be, but because so many years have passed and all of us have gone through all kinds of seasons. Many of these people were single when I met them and worked with them and have adult children now. And some of them are grandparents. It's been a really long arc. And it's really been pretty fun. There were places where I was mad as hell about something. And there were places where someone else got mad as hell about something. And there were places where one of us, me or someone, decided it would be in the best interest of our peace of mind and perhaps even emotional stability to do a clean break for a while. I've seen people go through, as I did, all kinds of substance abuse challenges. Nice find, unless you bought it. Dude just drove by with some cool looking furniture. Looked like it had cherry on the outside of it. But there are very, very few people in the world who could convincingly argue that Brett shut a door and is holding the doorknob on the other side, so it'll stay shut, because he's mad at me, or I'm mad at him. The conversations that have needed to be had have been had. Those doors aren't shut, and using the old Neolithic email, I very occasionally, and this is when someone actually enters my mind for real. It's not in pursuit of an agenda, it's just that I'm thinking about someone I love, or loved. And, I'll reach out with something. And I'm not holding any doors shut. And if there's anything that needs to be talked about, I'm not a mind reader. And I suppose that a little bit of courage and fortitude and belief that seasons can end especially for you folks that are all about Phoenix symbolism, all right? Got that. Well, anyways, let's get back to the bamboo. So got the bamboo cut up, out to the road. And while I was out there cutting it, I thought, this ain't as hard a job to do as I thought it was going to be, and I'm kind of liking it. And the stuff that I was hearing when I was thinking about doing it during the past couple of weeks doesn't matter really today, because it never bothered anybody laying here. And I thought, there's probably got to be a smart way that I can cut this bamboo that I've just halved, the pieces that were 20 feet long, and the stack was about 4 feet high. I thought I might as well just restack it and think about putting stuff on the bottom that kind of fans out so that it'll function in a way like a basket for things that I put on top. I should put on a good pair of gloves here. I could only find one, but it was a good glove. I did that one to do the compressing of things together, What do they call that thing? It's all over Kenite political iconography. The bundle of sticks with the damn hatchet in the middle of it. Fascia. There it is. It's on courthouses. I don't know. I look at it and it's like, hey, if this axe don't scare you, these sticks of dynamite will. And, it's easy to bust one stick, but a bundle of sticks doesn't break so easy, and all that kind of stuff that we walk around with and sort of know. And so I started restacking it. And sure enough, I knew I could do it in 2 trips now. What seemed before like a terrifically large job, when I restacked everything, it wasn't. I could get up and to the road with it in just 2 trips. And, but as usual, another thing that I've put off, because the gate's almost always closed, unless I'm pushing something through it, like cut down bamboo or a lawnmower to cut the back half acre. There's one step it's beyond iffy. Okay, it's a 1x8 step that I lopped off of a 12-foot long 1x8, and I made a bunch of steps out there a long time ago. And wood is finite. What starts off as a lovely flight of ramshackle Tolkien-looking stairs going down to your backyard 10 feet below eventually turns into something that can bust your ankle. And so I knew about that one step, and I have to be real careful about that going up or down. And I have handrails on both sides. I keep thinking to myself, you don't need to fix that because you ain't going to be here long enough to worry about it. But anyways, I was getting that stuff stacked up, and at the bottom I found some more bamboo that was under fallen leaves, laying perfectly flat on the ground. And the stuff on top of it had all faded and lost its water, like I hoped. But down underneath I found about 4 long, very long, bamboo trees, right? 20 plus feet long. All the leaves were still green. And the entire stalk or trunk of the bamboo was also as healthy as the day I cut it down, weeks and weeks ago. And I immediately realized, well, that's because it was never parched to death. And the morning dew never fully evaporated away down there under those leaves and stuff, which protected it, from the heat of the sun and evaporation and decomposition and so forth. It would eventually rot, of course it would. Bugs eat their way through those spacers in bamboo, and once they get in there and start eating and laying larvae and stuff, it don't take long for that stuff to just go away. Really, it just turns into powder after a while. But something about those few healthy green ones down underneath all the death, kind of hit me as I was dragging that stuff out to the road. And then I had to close the gate again, which is a homemade gate with a lawnmower wheel attached to one end of it so that it kind of rolls open. And I have a real jury-rigged hinge assembly on the far right end of it that works. And it's made out of scrap wood, scrap fencing, and scrap vinyl crisscrossy garden edging panels, and a lot of screws. And some liquid nails, actually, when I made it many years ago. But today was the day I had to fix the hinge. Because if I don't fix the hinge, my dog is going to get out from the backyard. It took me years to successfully figure out a way to keep him in the backyard. He's the second dog we've ever had that, gets all yakety sax in the backyard and could find a way out because there's a deer or another dog or something going on in the neighborhood, and he wants to go be all Knights Templar on him. You know what I'm saying? Protect us. Protect the motherland. So I had to fix the gate hinge today. I'm going to go out there in a little bit with a big hammer and pop it in the ground deeper. I was able to get it about this far in the ground just by leaning on it real good with that hand with the good glove on it. In a safe zone of that hand. My right hand's not the bad one. My finger picking hand, especially about 20 years ago when my pinky decided to join the band and develop some dexterity, I started off with a thumb and 2 fingers. They call that the Charlie Poole style. I had never heard of Charlie Poole when I started playing guitar with these 3 fingers, but it's cool that he does it too. Did it. And I thank him for the lesson of drinking yourself to death even when you have talent, which I thought about over many years of drinking too much. Right hand's all right, which is good because this is the one that's got to hold the weapon. This hand is kind of like the spouse in the wheelchair. Needs help getting around. It's all right. I still got a couple of different slides that I'm going to have to learn how to use a slide with either my pinky or my forefinger, because these guys are entirely retired. You know, so chop wood and carry water. I suppose it's probably time to fix steps. Kairos time is different. Kairos time is very, very different because in the absence of metrics and measurement, in the Chronos time kind of way, chop, chop, chops, 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 right? Always enjoyed working. I didn't need a government to get me a job. Ever. And just like me, when I encounter homeless people and get them something to eat, I don't mind if my county or state is willing to give us some bread and some grain and some canned goods if we need them. We generally don't need them, but it's good to know that those people are out there, you know? But in terms of the other kind of helps, you know, getting a job because you know how to do a damn handshake, they find you some gig out at one of these county offices where you sort of sit there and answer a phone mostly and write stuff up, sit behind a desk and get over that hangover so you go back out tonight and get another one. Yeah, I've seen the reward system in action for years. It's amazing. All you got to know how to do are the right handshakes, right? And all of a sudden, it's amazing, isn't it? It's like those seething energies just come pouring your way, and before you know it, you got your face on a billboard, and you're running for office, or maybe you've got a plum gig at some county facility, maybe maintenance or the school system or the community college. Some plum gig, pays good, you don't have to do anything, you know. I forget who said it. Somebody once said, yeah, that's one of those your ass is going to get big jobs, right? And people like that probably don't cook either very often. So there's going to be that. They probably don't tip Uber and DoorDash terribly well. Round it up to the next dollar. Keep the pennies. And, you know, you just get to live off the fat of the land. If you know how to wink. Had a lot of drive-bys here in the last week or so, right? That's a tactic I've been watching for a very long time. The drive-by, not a drive-by shooting, the drive-by. And I'm not talking about the dude with the golf cart and the excellent stereo that gets out in the fresh air, I think often with a friend or a spouse or maybe one of his kids, and drives around this part of Leakesville in a very nice looking cart He has never crashed into anything or swerved, so I'm presuming he's not lit. And the Motown that comes out of that cart for about a minute from when it enters my hearing and then leaves it is always wonderful. And I wave. You know? Every now and again it's like, oh, I love this song. And you only get a glimpse, which is enough, right? Just a glimpse can send you online, and then you're listening to the original single and watching the 45 spin like you did when you were a kid. That's easy to do now. I think of it as a supremely wonderful thing. And for about 2 weeks, I started listening to who are the top AI country bands, and listen to some soloists, fictitious soloists, some fictitious quartets. One guy always had a fiddle. And you know, these concerts where they throw the hologram of some damn little star of the past that the powers of the air made into a big star. And oh God, I just can spot AI so fast right now, it's great. And it's fun to interact with them in the comments, you know. I watched a whole compilation. No, I couldn't watch the whole thing, actually. After the moment it showed its hand, right? I realized that there were a limited set of laugh tracks in this AI program that generated supposedly comedy. And there was no video of a person doing it. It was audio, and you saw the text, right? And the first joke was kind of funny, but it took a long while to get there with what I would think of as too many words, right? Like one of my favorite jokes, and I'm not going to tell you the joke. I'll just tell you the punchline, okay? The setting and the punchline, okay? A fly goes into a bar. And the punchline is, no, I hate onions, okay? The joke's about this long. There's like 6 back and forths between the bartender and the fly on 2 different visits to the bar. That's it. It's a perfect joke. It's about food. It's about intoxicants and fallen human behavior, habitual, stupid human behavior. It's about gluttony and it's about how everybody's different and sees things differently, and it's the tiniest little joke, and it's great. A fly walks into a bar. Yeah. Well, if we have a sense of humor, God has a sense of humor. Right? Because there's a certain kind of humor that doesn't hurt anything. And at the same time communicates truth. And the funniest things, as strange as this may sound, the things that people laugh at the most are jokes and puns and riddles and fables and parables that are really about life and death. And there's a key in them that isn't funny, right? The takeaways are what matter, you know? And so that's what I would like to say to all the folks whose names I know. And everybody else too. Strangely calm. During a time when the world is experiencing global mayhem, some of which even drives down my street and scowls at me out the window. Oh man, I think everybody knows what's coming. I think everybody knows. The Germans have a word for everything. I mean it. They have a word for this. It's called zeitgeist. Look it up. Remember I before E. Zeitgeist. Or don't. There's words that break the rule. Anyway, it's a feeling of an entire community or nation or population. Spook one deer, they all know. Right? Spook one bird, they all flee. Because they felt the same thing all at once. In Kairos time, not according to a calendar or a watch or a sundial, although a sundial would be a much calmer way to go about the day. Minutes are a pain in the ass. Minutes aren't mentioned in the Bible. How about that? Neither are seconds, all right? Yeah. I think everybody knows what's coming, or that something's coming. It's like you feel the fist before the sucker punch connects. And you sense that someone is looking at you, and you turn around and someone is. But everybody's feeling that, and the same thing is behind them or in front of them. Don't believe in chicken. It's not a good idea. My dog is dreaming.